Before we begin, 3 messages. Here's a riddle. How do you build native cross-platform mobile applications quickly without having to rewrite code and hire consultants at a huge cost? Titanium from Appcelerator. Called the easy button for mobile application development, it allows you to focus more on what's important, getting product out the door. Join the more than 1.5 million active developers who have created over 13,000 apps at www.appcelerator.com. If you're a freelancer or running your own small business, the one thing you probably wish you could do quicker and easier is invoicing. That's where FreshBooks.com comes in. They take the pain out of invoicing and get you paid faster. Effortlessly create invoices and email them to your clients. They can view them, print them, and even pay you right away with PayPal or any of their 11 other payment gateways. FreshBooks.com can automate late payment reminders and help track your billable hours at the office or while on the go with their apps for iPhone, BlackBerry, and Android. I'm only one of over 2 million really satisfied customers, and you can be one as well, all for free. Just head to www.freshbooks.com and sign up. When you do, be sure to say you heard of them from untether.tv, and one of you, my loyal viewers, will win a birthday cake each and every week. Doesn't even have to be your birthday. Get started today for free at www.freshbooks.com. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Hello everybody, my name is Rob Woodbridge from untether.tv. This is where we spend some time in conversation with mobile rock stars. And from Philadelphia, this is a really interesting piece. It's going to be anyways. I saw an article on Mashable last week about Tim Soo, who's our guest today. And Tim is a university student at University of Pennsylvania, right? In the medical field, classically trained in, so your first year medical school, you're classically trained in violin and piano and voice.
Correct.
And the video that I saw on Mashable, it'll play at the end of this of this session, and it's also, there's a link obviously in the show notes up above us. Was Tim playing how many instruments? 4 instruments?
Just 4. Yeah.
Just four, but 4 invisible instruments. And vocal, obviously, singing Bruno Mars, Just the Way You Are. Mm-hmm. And what was so compelling about this entire experience was that there wasn't an instrument to be seen. It was all done with a Wiimote and an iPhone.
Correct.
And your voice. And this is one of those things that you know, I've done a bunch of interviews around the impact that mobile is going to have on how we learn music and musicality and instrumentation. And this was just one of those things that I couldn't resist. So I reached out to Tim, and he agreed to come on here unknowingly, not even warned. But and I you know, the mandate here is the conversation. I want to understand why and you know, the process of doing this and what it is that you're doing. And now you're moving into, I mean, your first year medical student in Philadelphia. I got to ask you, first of all, why do something like this? What compels a guy who has lived with and learned instruments, real instruments, pounding the keyboard on the piano, playing a violin? What would compel you to do this? Just walk us through that, Tim.
Okay. Well, the initial idea started back when I was still in college at Emory, and I needed a violin for a performance for this theory class I was taking, but I had left it at home, and I didn't have a car. And so I was also in this electronic music class, so I decided, you know what, we already have Wiimotes in here that we're working with. We have, then I was actually using a touch-sensitive glove.
Yeah.
And they were just there. I'm like, okay, you know what, let's put 2 and 2 together. And actually, it wasn't that difficult. But over time, the idea stuck. So, I mean, growing up playing instruments, you have to carry them everywhere. They're heavy. It's not that great. And at the same time, when you play a violin, it's limited limited to the sound of a violin.
Yeah.
So you look across the orchestra and there's that cello rocking out, and you can't sound like a cello. You know, all I'm doing is playing this really high-pitched instrument that, albeit sometimes, is annoying.
You had cello envy.
Yeah, I think all string instrument players have cello envy. Yeah, and at some point, when I think in this day and age, people are learning multiple instruments because they want to expand the repertoire. But it's annoying when you're in performance, if you want to switch back and forth, you have to, you know, put it down, make sure it's okay, go get another one. It's not anything that, I guess, is fluid.
Yeah.
So on the opposite side, I did a lot of electronic music in college, or computer music rather, and from there you get to build your own sounds, which is awesome. Because while traditional players might say it's limited to certain timbres, by and large, you're still limited to the power of the speaker.
Right.
But you can still do a lot of neat noises that you'd never get from a wooden instrument. And so I wanted to combine the two. Because what I see, I guess, in the grand scheme of instruments is you have things as simple as a rock band, where ultimately they're just games. You know, you hit a button and it triggers something.
Yep.
Simple enough. On the opposite side, you have something as complex, like a violin, like a cello, a trumpet, whatever have you. But they require years and years to master. And so, because there's that gap, I think there's a huge disconnect between the field of classical music and computer music, where computer musicians largely stay within their MIDI boards, their computers, stay on their laptop.
Yep.
And this is where you get things like laptop orchestras or iPhone orchestras.
Yes.
On the other side, you have these acoustic people. I mean, in the early days of the project, I presented to some acoustic musicians, and they just wouldn't have it because they think it's kind of sullying the name of.
Well, it's a full affront, I would say. You know,
exactly.
I've spent my life learning this instrument, and then here comes a kid walking in and says, "Look what I can do with," you know, and then. I mean, so yeah, I can understand their perspective. Yeah. You know, you learn a craft, and then you come in there and.
The point was to try and bridge the two, make something that won't be as versatile as, say, a real instrument, but takes less time to learn.
Yes.
It's more than just a fun game. And so I guess that's kind of where, like, I've worked out the rationale about where this project came from multiple times in my head, and I can't come up with just one. So it is what it is. We'll put it at that.
But it's so true because, you know, a lot of people, well, I mean, people have spent their careers learning an instrument, right? Their entire lifetime. I mean, I have played the guitar poorly. I mean, probably, well, I mean, I don't even want to tell you how old I am, but maybe for 18 years, 19 years. And I suck. Still, right?
I doubt that.
But, you know, I mean, my kids, whenever I play, put their heads up, you know, hands up, and shake their heads like, "No, Dad, stop." But you know, it's a craft. It's a love, right? Like you start to, you know, I used to think about it when I was at work. I just want to go home and play the guitar, and you know, and then at some point you realize that you're not going to make a career out of playing an instrument, and then it becomes fun, right? Mm-hmm. But people have spent their lifetime learning these instruments, and do you think that kind of, do you think that's going to disappear, right? Like, so like this technology's moved it. Like we talked about it before, like Guy Wang at Sonic Smule, who does the ocarina, and they do a violin, and they do, you know, all from an iPhone or an iPad, and they leverage all the inputs from these devices to create an instrument. And their goal is to democratize learning. Like they don't want you to I mean, Guy says it so well, and I think it's what you emulate here, is that everybody has a song in them. It shouldn't take you 20 years to learn to play it.
Right.
Right? Is that what you're trying to do here? You're just trying to, you know, facilitate that, or do you give it that much thought?
I guess I think acoustic or traditional players, as this field becomes bigger and bigger, with, you know, projects like Smule, they're going to hold tighter and tighter onto tradition, and which inevitably is going to happen. But my project isn't necessarily just to cut off one pathway and move into another, but maybe open the eyes of maybe some classical musicians and say, hey, you know what, I can transfer my skills and still kind of take part. Yeah. Or someone who's purely electronic can pull out their, you know, their violin skills from when they were 4 and had to take lessons because their mom made them, and bring it back into the acoustic realm. And so the point of using gestural control, and now the fact that, you know, you have these great little devices that have built-in accelerometers, tuning fork gyroscopes, you can just map traditional movements to electronic music.
Yeah.
And so I think one particular thing that distinguishes this from other electronic instruments and even projects that Smule's working on is that I really am trying to mimic the traditional movement. So I'm not really changing that much about that while still maintaining the electronic aspect of the computer aspect of designing your own sounds, mapping your own MIDI. So
okay, so walk the viewers and listeners through this process, because if they haven't seen the video or any of the videos that you have at timsoo.com under your projects, the invisible instrument, the one video on Mashable had you singing and playing these four instruments for Bruno Mars song, Just the Way You Are.
When I see your face, not a thing that I would change, 'cause girl, you're amazing, just the way you are. When you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while, 'cause girl, you're amazing, just the way you are.
It's a piano on an iPhone, right? Basically a keyboard. But you're using a Wiimote to simulate the bow for a violin and the drumsticks for drums, right?
right.
So walk through that. Walk through what it is that you're doing. You know, at a high level. I mean, don't get down too deep into the technology, but walk through what you're doing.
Okay. So pretty much when you have an accelerometer, it's giving out three pieces of information, just three directions. And for most gestural recognition, someone will do a movement. Like in a Wii game, you do a movement, computer recognizes what it is, but it's not in real time.
Right.
So what I'm doing here is just using your laptop to filter that information. For a bow movement, you know, it's sensing for movement in one particular direction and ignoring the other two. For drums, it's looking for when the acceleration changes from one direction to the other. And then just because there's the built-in 1 and 2 buttons on the bottom of the Wiimote, I'm using that to just change between instruments. And if you have a built-in looper, say like with Ableton or any other program,
Yep.
you can just kind of have an orchestra at your fingertips. So
So you basically lay a track, let it loop, like a drum beat, for example,
exactly.
and then you play on top of that.
Exactly.
I mean, how real time was it when you were doing the song? So, I mean, obviously you lay the music and then do the vocal track on top of that. But just out of curiosity, is it can you almost do it in real time and then build from there, or do you just splice it together?
So the way I did it, I guess, is first time, like I wrote out all the parts that I wanted to play, which instruments I wanted to switch to.
Yep.
Just because I needed to learn the song.
Yes.
And so recording the first few times, I just did it real time.
Okay.
And then from there, once I figured out what I needed to be doing, I filmed just specific segments and then sliced those into where they fit. And then replaced the original just rough take. So it's kind of like when you're doing a vocal track,
Yeah. And so all you used for that whole thing, I mean, so you had your laptop, and that's basically where all the computational power is, right?
Right.
It's the interface, but all you used was the iPhone and the Wiimote,
Right.
and obviously your own vocal. Now, what about? I keep coming back to that. The question is that what are you doing this for? This is a project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to raise a little bit of money to do what with this project?
So right now, if you notice, I guess people who do gestural interface will notice the program that I'm using. I'm not using any of my own software. Right. I'm filtering the information through pretty much just algorithmic work that I did in Max MSP. The iPhone app is Touch OSC,
yep.
And it's all routing through Osculator on my computer. So it's a huge hassle because there have been some musicians who have approached me saying, "Can I get this set up? I want to write something for a string quartet for invisible instruments." Well, for that to happen, each person needs to buy all three of these pieces of software.
Yep.
It will load it separately.
Yep.
And that's a little bit too much of a hassle. So the reason I'm raising this money is so I can create something simple and robust that a user can just say, or just even someone who doesn't know much about technology, a kid who wants to just play around with instruments, pull up a screen, see the drums on there, and play along with it.
Yeah.
Without having to actually I don't know, connect a million different things to make sure it works.
I mean, it just seems so. I think it's as natural as an instrument should be, which is like basically. I tell my kids this, and they're not as old as you yet, but they're getting there. I mean, they're 4.5. But I tell them that everything around them is an instrument, right? So it can be a table, it can be your own body is percussive. Right. You know, your mouth and your cheeks are percussive, and then there's also traditional instruments, right? And
right.
So you try to get that ingrained in them that everything's an instrument, and literally, quite literally, you're trying to prove that is that you know that every piece or everything that you can interact with is musical, and in hopes that at some point they have that desire to play an instrument.
Exactly.
You know, you want to engender that in the kids, and so I play for them and I do all of these things, but. Like what you're talking about is quite literally, listen, you know, there's a familiarity, a comfort level with a Wiimote or something to that extent, or a mobile phone, and why not pull out that song that's in you already?
Right.
Because you know, a generation is growing up with rock band and you know, mock instruments, but that have become very impressive performers, right? Some of these guys. Right. You know, they do whatever it is, 1,000 beats a minute on a drum set, and it's like it's crazy how good these guys are getting at, and that's a new form of instrumentation. Do you think that?
Yeah, no, I definitely. So some people's arguments, like you mentioned before, is that once you tone it down to, you know, gestural control, say from a traditional instrument to the invisible instrument, you're losing so much. Well, I think what time you don't have to spend on mastering the traditional brass or wooden instrument, you're now spending on being able to do things like, you know, 100 beats per minute on Guitar Hero. I think there's a lot to be said about we're mastering new regions of music and instrumentation that we just haven't seen before. And I guess the reasoning behind this project is to help facilitate that, give people room to say, well, what do I want to? I mean, so one important thing I want to do with the software is allow people to map any parameter of the instrument to anything they want. So maybe not even necessarily the sound. You do bow movement, it doesn't trigger the sound, but it changes the additive synthesis, or it changes the tone of the sound. So.
And I mean, you've been playing with the Wiimote and the iPhone, but have you ever thought about using, you know, something like Microsoft Kinect or something like that, where it's body movements or body, you know, tied to something? Is it just? Do you kind of look at this as your oyster, saying any mobile thing anywhere should be able to? I should be able to pick it up and have a beautiful tone that comes out of it.
Yeah, I chose the Wiimote and the iPhone specifically because they're just so powerful. Yeah, because it had so many things already built in.
Yep.
But the point of this project isn't to be limited to those at all. So I did think of the Kinect, especially when it came. So this project actually predated the Kinect, but when the Kinect came out, I played around with it. And you can do great things with the depth, and some guy actually came out with an air guitar project, but I think because it requires you to be in front of a video, and because their videos aren't, you know, at 100 megapixels where you can see individual
fingers moving,
it's still limited to what you want to do.
Yeah.
Having said that, people are doing interesting things with using depth control to control sound. This guy created a project, Matt Gaddis, at Music Hack Day, where he was using just, you know, arm movement to control different parameters. And there are performances like that are a little bit esoteric, but in the computer music world, where you use the how the light reflects off the performer to control the music parameter, which then feeds back into the performer. And so people are doing things like this, but I think that kind of thing might speak to a smaller audience. And so I wanted this to be able to be available to the crowd that maybe doesn't know much more than, you know, how to play Guitar Hero, all the way to the people who want to create experimental music performances.
Well, it just seems so logical that you apply a layer of technology to instrumentation, and if it doesn't make it simpler, or if it, like, I don't want to use the word simple, because music is music, and you know, some people play it very well and it's complicated, but if you bring it down to the point where it's not going to take me 15 lessons to just be able to start. And ultimately, that's what you want, is people to start. And it just seems so logical that the technology can be that filter. It can be that first layer. It can eliminate the first 15 lessons and just allow me to pick up air and you know, and a Wiimote and make a noise.
Yeah, I mean, because as we facilitate certain parts of playing music, now you're gonna just with this project, for example, you're going to have people needing to figure out how to coordinate playing the drums, maybe, and then immediately switching back.
Yeah.
And that requires a whole new skill set that I don't know has even been explored. So.
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen a mobile one-man band, and like everybody's seen this guy, guitar in hand, drum on his back, you know, attached to the feet, so that, you know, he's got the bass drum and he's got the snare on the end, he's got the harmonica. You know, ultimately that seems complicated.
Yeah.
What you're doing, not so complicated, just because it's the technology is obfuscated, right? I don't have to remember to, you know, shake my head and move my guitar so that I get a cymbal and a bass drum. So tell me about Kickstarter. So you've put this project up on Kickstarter to get it moving, right? To start to find some funding. How's that going for you? Is it moving?
I keep looking at the trends every day. I look at the dashboard, and if it continues along the current trend, then I'll reach 10,000 pretty much exactly at the end of the project. But it's
That's perfect.
Yeah, where you really just don't know, because Kickstarter was really my way of saying, one, gauging interest, and two, saying whether I take this and make it commercial, let's do something real with this, make it available, or just drop it, I'm going to move on to other things.
Yes.
And so right now I'm not sure how to interpret how it's going, because there's some people who are so enthusiastic, approach me about different ways that this could be used, and then there are others, I think, that think it's a really great gimmick. It's not anything they would want to take the time to use, just because they have to have that external piece of hardware, the Wiimote.
Yeah.
If it was just the iPhone and somehow you could sense your other hand, then I think it would be much more successful, much more widespread.
Well, you know, you never know. You know, I don't know if you've ever met Guy over at Smule. I think the two of you guys should have a long conversation about because I mean, maybe not, you know, motion the other hand, but what they've been able to do with this device is like, you know, who would have thought that maybe blowing on the microphone could simulate a flute, right, or an ocarina, and certainly with, as you said, the gyroscope has had a big impact, but we're still not, Apple's still not, or the device makers are still not finished innovating yet, and certainly software developers are not finished innovating yet when it comes to these things.
Right.
There was a YouTube video that was floating around. I want to get your take on this. A YouTube video that was floating around maybe last summer. It was a band called Atomic Tom, and they did this song called "Take Me Out." And ultimately, it was. Is
this the one on the train?
On the subway in New York City? Yeah. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So what was your impression of something like that? Like, you know, forget the story. I think it was bull. Their instruments got stolen and all that. But these guys, for those of you who haven't watched, I've mentioned this a couple of times because it's so interesting. You know, 4 guys on a subway, filmed by two iPhones. 4 guys on a subway, 1 guy playing a keyboard, 1 guy playing a drum, 1 guy playing a guitar, and the other guy basically singing and recording it through another iPhone. What was your take on that?
Oh, I thought it was really cool. Just the fact that they were able to convert their song into I don't know, a new medium. Having said that, the computer music side of me was thinking, well, he's just triggering a note. There's not much he can do with it. Yes. If that song wasn't already well written, if that song didn't already have some buzz behind it, like if they're creating a new piece and just trying to play it on an iPhone, I don't know how much reception it would have had.
If he couldn't sing or if there wasn't a structure already, you're saying like yeah.
I mean, and not to bash them at all. I thought it was a great video. It was almost a really great PR way to bring attention to their actual concerts. And I think they even said this in an article. Yeah. It did great for having people go to iTunes and buy the entire album. Yep. But it wasn't anything they actually planned on doing or planned on performing at their concerts, because it is just it's in the end just a gimmick. Yeah.
But I mean, it just shows that I mean, a well choreographed song ultimately, you know, without instruments, they can you sing it. But yeah, you're right. I was looking for that kind of the reaction is that you know what, they're just replicating what they've already done, and you know, they're not creating anything new here. They didn't invent the software, and it's well rehearsed, and it turned out very well. Well, I mean, I thought this is great because you can convert something that took a long time to make into an iPhone song basically overnight, it would seem.
And I mean, those kinds of things are really important because it brings the general public into, hey, maybe what can I do with this, you know?
So what did Mashable do for you? Like, did that article stimulate any kind of interest? You know, the guys that I talk to typically on this show are clamoring to get an article in Mashable because they're trying to drive traffic to their apps or to their company.
Right.
Did it do anything for you when that article went up there?
Yeah, I'll say the majority of my traffic on that YouTube video / probably a large amount of the donations stemmed from Mashable.
That's wicked.
Yeah, I don't know if they're public, but when you click on the stats of the video, I think 90% of the views are linked from Mashable. So, I mean, I honestly didn't explore Mashable much until I saw, whoa, this is where all the feeds are coming from, and the writer happened to send me notice that, hey, I wrote this article about it. I have no idea how I even made it on there in the first place, but they've been fantastic, so...
Well, I mean, I think that this is right up their alley when it comes to kind of innovative spots around taking the technology and using it for an alternative. Using it alternatively like this. So you've been in front of a lot of people doing this. You know, some of your demos on your website.
Mm-hmm.
You were at Music Hack Day. You've been to a bunch of these Music Hack Days. I mean, what's the general reaction to what you're doing when it comes to this stuff?
It depends on the crowd, actually. So at the Music Hack Days, these are people who this is their life.
Yeah,
they love technology, tying technology to music, and I'm shocked every time I go. I mean, I've only been twice, but and I'm shocked by how well they receive this. When I was at Music Hack Day in New York, I decided to completely reinvent the violin on the iPhone, and I was thinking, okay, maybe somebody will think it's cool, but in terms of programming prowess, I was way behind all these other guys who had years and years of experience, and so I didn't think it would have any reception. But I think the fact among this community that it's not just a web app, that I'm actually able to do something with it. There's a physical representation of it that makes it seem cool. So when I perform it like that, I generally get a really big reception. On the other side, when I'm demoing it to companies or people who aren't necessarily of the programming crowd or designing crowd side of it, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting.
It's neat. Yeah,
it's neat, exactly.
Maybe it's a lack of vision or something, because I see what you're doing is you come to a point when you have kids, or when you're going to have kids, and maybe in a long time for you, once you've gone through this degree and 14 others, which is I think when you've been, but I see a point in time where my kids are going to be learning like the virtual clarinet in school, or the virtual trumpet, or an instrument that is, it's almost better to teach them something. I don't want to lose instrumentation, but you're right, variety.
Right.
When they want to learn that second instrument, they might actually be opting to learn an electronic or a digital form, or using whatever device they're going to be using in 10 or 12 years as a musical instrument, which I think is amazing. People talk about Rock Band and all of these games as games and distractions, and I say that we're not going to be too far away where there's going to be a television show and then a band that all they've done is hacked Rock Band, and they're playing that with original material, and those are their instruments, right? So you start to see that this is a brand new world we live in of instruments, and it's the first time. This is kind of an upheaval, since the computer was invented and you can play music on it. It's the first time really that we've truly invented instruments out of nothing like this.
Yeah.
In a long time, I would say. I mean, I'm not an expert on it. So I want to shift a little bit here, because we talked about it right before we started filming. You're classically trained in violin, piano, and vocal.
Right.
What other instruments do you play?
Guitar. I know how to play. I have a drum set.
So you're like your own rock band, basically,
kind of,
with the strings as well.
I think even just as a musician, in order to be a good musician, you need to understand how the other parts of the band are playing.
Yeah.
What issues they're dealing with. And so while I definitely have no prowess by any means on guitar or drums or other instruments that I try and attempt to play, it's good because I kind of get at least a little bit of understanding onto what they're going through.
You can get by.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you're doing that. You're at UPenn as a med student,
Right.
first year. And we talked about the next stage for you. I mean, after you disrupt music and musical instruments and instrumentation and the way people learn, talk about, how you, I mean, what's that next piece for you beyond this, beyond the music?
So, I mean, my ultimate goal, because I think there's a great community involved in music and technology and this musical hackers, we'll call them. But that same community doesn't exist for medicine. And when I'm at these hack days or at these hackathons, I'm thinking, you take these minds and apply them to just simple medical devices, and it would speed up how the antiquated medical field right now. I mean, honestly, they're trying to get iPhones and iPads into the medical field, but you have all these people who have just no idea how to use it, and the people who are designing them, granted this is very general, but aren't exactly doing a great job with user experience. And so we need people who know the field well, know what users like, and bridge that into the medical field. And so that's where I would like to go ultimately, using my medical degree to make small devices, make apps, things that will help improve the patient experience, improve the physician's experience, and hopefully expedite that process so healthcare won't be such a huge burden in the U.S.
I mean, it's so interesting because, looking at it from that perspective, leveraging mobile technology to basically hack the body, or hack the medical industry, like you've done with musical and instrumentation. I mean, it's so appealing because I've seen a bunch of apps, pulse ox apps and heart rate monitors and insulin or sugar levels. Some of these are inserted into the body physically. Some of them are ingested, obviously. But this is almost to that point where it's bringing healthcare into the home, kind of thing, where you can monitor yourself and send your vitals out to your true doctor, or I mean, does it go beyond that? Like, you want to cut yourself open and insert some chips and see what happens? Like,
I mean, I would probably try to avoid invasive things. Yeah. But in the same way, like the Invisible Instruments Project is trying to bring classical musicians maybe out of their shell and electronic musicians out of their shell. I think what my end goal with some of these apps to help patients on an individual basis is to realize they have a lot more autonomy than they know. I mean, one thing I've realized since being in medical school is that, one, doctors know a heck of a lot. The amount they cram into 4 years is amazing.
Thank God, by the way. Thank God.
Yeah.
It's like I'm really, Tim, I am really happy to hear that.
Well, then you're not going to like this next part.
Okay.
Because the second part is doctors don't know that much about when it comes to patient experience.
Right. Yeah.
They know exactly how to diagnose. They know the symptoms. But if you don't have the disease, you don't know what goes on in day-to-day life. And so for patients to realize that their data, their info is so critical, and that just even how they feel about their own body is probably better information than anything your doctor can give you. Yeah. Utilizing that to help the patient realize, the doctor's word isn't necessarily golden. You should definitely trust your doctor, but it is a two-way relationship, and I think that's one thing that lacks in the U.S. at least. And so that's one realm I'd like to help facilitate.
It's amazing. It's incredible. And where does this come from? Like, this is totally off topic, but where does this thought process? I mean, is it just that you wake up one day and you say, listen, there's something wrong here. Something's been bugging me. I got to figure out how to, to make this better, or to tweak this, or to disrupt this. Does it just, are these just thoughts that you've always had?
I think so. I think it all starts out with my inability to focus on one thing. So I've always I really value variety, because by looking at this thing, you then suddenly spark in your mind that other project. I should go work on that. And so I don't think I would have had as much success with music as I have if I wasn't concurrently in medical school. And as weird as that sounds, working back and forth, eventually you realize you see niches that need to be filled. You see areas where it's like, well, we have this technology over here. Why can't we apply it over here? No one sees that. And so, I mean, in the older days, when you follow one track, maybe not necessarily older days, but when people just follow necessarily one track, you become blind to everything else. And That's one thing I just hate about the education system, that you lose this sense of naivety of, idealism to the entire world of education once you get fixed into your own vocabulary. Even just in medical school, you learn all the terms and you forget how to say, ear infection.
I have a headache.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we actually have to get reverse trained into how to speak to your patient. Remember that they don't say otitis media, they say ear infection.
Right.
And so trying to stay away from that is always been one of my goals. And because I try to do that and try to keep variety, I see niches, I guess. I see places where I think there are simple solutions, just no one's solving them. I mean, the whole thing about hand washing stations, 6 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that anywhere.
No.
Just one nurse with one brilliant idea said, why don't we just put these everywhere? Simple solution. Radicalize medicine.
Yep.
And so, I think there's, especially within the information age, with the speed at which everything's going, there's a lot of need for people to help fill in these gaps, these interdisciplinary gaps where otherwise people may not have seen before.
It's amazing. So, I mean, you go through the whole process of learning instruments. So ultimately you can disrupt the learning process and learning instruments. You go through, you're ultimately going to go through medical school so that you can be a doctor, obviously, but then hack the doctor profession and make it better ultimately, right? Like, it's not about, it is about patient care and it is about people learning instruments, but what it really is about making that process better and easier ultimately. And is that a good way to summarize that?
No, I mean, that's a great way to speak about it, because I think right now there's so many biomedical startups, medical device companies, but they're focusing so much on the high end, on the business, the insurance side, how can the 1% of the population that can afford it, how can we better diagnose them?
Yeah.
And which is great. We definitely need those types of people, but I think there's a lot to be said to bring them back down to earth. We need to figure out how to change the culture that surrounds our medicine, and help fit that into this new technological age and information age.
I love it, Tim. God, how many people are there like you? That's my only question. Is that do your friends look at you like, what are you doing, Tim? Like,
my friends think I'm nuts.
But that's always a good sign, because you know what? I think it was Einstein that said, if an idea isn't crazy, if an idea isn't insane, it's not a good idea, right? Like, it's just it's what everybody else is thinking. So kudos to you for what you're doing here. It's really impressive, and I'm hoping that I can help generate a little bit more interest in the Kickstarter program, so that you can actually generate a little bit more and close that before you actually close the project.
I'm hoping so.
But I can't imagine, throw up a Kickstarter about trying to figure out how to solve the issues around the medical industry. That might be another option for you as you get through your education.
Well, so I have an idea in the works, and I'm trying to see if I can recruit a team this weekend at the New York City Startup Weekend to put together a prototype. I don't want to speak too much about it now because it might tank and be unsuccessful. But if and when it's successful, that'd be a great idea I could put on Kickstarter. And I've spoken to people who are there's a health hacking community. It's small, but Rock Health is coming out with an incubator. Blue something Ventures has their own incubator, and so it's growing, but it's a new field. So I think Kickstarter might be a great avenue to help nurture that.
I think it's a small and growing field, because I think that you're not going to have many volunteers, for true, medical hacking. Ultimately, you're going to have to, be like, everybody else who tests it on themselves. And I don't know a lot of people who have that kind of fortitude to be able to do it.
Right.
What's the impact of this? Oh, you just turned into the Incredible Hulk, Tim. That's all. I wanted to bring you on. I wanted to have a conversation with you around what you're doing, because it's. I had no idea about what your past was, or how well-rounded you are, from classical to medical, as well as on it. He's so technically proficient, and you can carry a tune, which is impressive. But I'd like to keep in touch with you as you go through this process,
Definitely.
and definitely keep in touch with what you're doing with Kickstarter, and see if we can amp that up. No guarantees. I think my mother's the only one that watches this video, and probably now your mother and your parents. But definitely so impressed with what you're doing, and you, when it comes to the future of instrumentation, how you can learn an instrument, bring that into your family or your house. I think that this is something that I'd love to see this thing succeed. And the fact that you're looking at applying that same logic to the medical industry, I think is revolutionary. And kudos to you for doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it takes off. There are days when I just look at myself and I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm throwing my medical education because, I mean, to be honest, like being a clinician is going to come second.
Yeah.
Because I think being this field, this hacking field, is much faster moving and it's where I'm needed right now. So there are days when I just don't know what I'm doing, and so hopefully I have to stick to my guns and stick to the little piece of idealism that I still have to motivate myself to get through all this. But.
Well, innovators are like that, right?
Right.
That's exactly what it is. It's kind of like a selfless thing, and then when you're done, when you've completed the project, you look back and you think, you know what, you've moved the needle a little bit, and my hope is that you do that, because I'd love to see this thing, both of these things, come to fruition. So definitely keep in touch if you don't mind.
I definitely will. Before this, I was watching all your other videos, and I think it's just great. It's kind of like a big thinker, like TED Talks, except on a real level, because it is unedited, unfiltered.
It's very unedited, very unfiltered, and some would say unprofessional, but at least for the most part, I keep my clothes on, and everybody seems to be fine with the outcome, isn't it?
You get much more insight into how people actually are when it's not a really rehearsed, I guess, interview.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this ends up being. Is when you have these kind of conversations, you get to the root of why they're doing it, and that's exactly what I'm really happy we could do this. I had some a great time listening to you, and I'm impressed with all that you've done at such a young age, and my hope is that you continue down this road. Don't get discouraged, and you just keep going, because there's a reason you're doing it, and the reason is that, as I said, you're going to move that along. If you can move these industries along. And, in 5 years, when my kids pick up an instrument and it's called the invisible violin, it'll be like, a Tim Soo production, Dr. Tim Soo. I think that's exactly where you're headed. So where can people find you? So it's timsoo.com.
Uh-huh.
And that's where all your projects are. And do you have a specific URL for the Kickstarter project, or is it just they can get it from there?
I mean, if you go to invisibleinstruments.com,
okay,
it'll take you straight to the project page. And then from there, it talks about all the past stuff, and there's a huge link to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and you should be looking up, and there's a link to the Kickstarter up above us, and you'll see some of the videos as well. Yeah, right up there. You see it? Do you see it? No, a little bit over. Just hit that button, all you guys who are watching, and I'll link to the video as well. Some of the videos that you've got. And Tim, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you. And hey, listen, thank you guys for watching. If you're still listening and watching to this, go and support Tim, timsoo.com, and go and click on the Kickstarter and give him a few bucks for this, because I think that this is something that has legs.
Thanks.